What's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for coming back to another video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Elektra. I am once again joined by Mike from the Z Review to be here in another collab review for Elektra. He was in my review for the 2003 Daredevil film, so I figured why not have him in my review for the follow-up. I should also mention, if you guys did not already see my latest video for the latest episode of WandaVision, I was just saying that I was out of town for a week visiting some family, but I'm very happy to be back making videos. And yeah, I made that video last night at like 4 in the morning, so I probably looked really tired. Probably not the best way to return to making videos, but I'm excited to be talking about Elektra right now, the follow-up to 2003's Daredevil, starring Ben Affleck in the role as Daredevil and also starring Jennifer Garner as Elektra, and she followed up that performance with this film 2 years later. Now, what I will say before I get into my thoughts on Elektra is that I really do enjoy that Daredevil film. I talked about it in my review, and if you guys haven't checked that review out that I did with the Z Review, I do highly recommend it. But yeah, that was a film that, sure, it's flawed, it's not amazing, it's not a phenomenal film, but I have a lot of nostalgia for it, and it just harkens back to this very simple time in the early comic book adaptation era. Now, that doesn't necessarily say that I'm blind to the negatives, but I do enjoy that film, and I always, at the time, really looked forward to a sequel. And near the end of that film, we see that Elektra is indeed killed by Bullseye, played by Colin Farrell in that film, and at the very end of the film, there is a setup for a sequel, or at least the setup of the fact that she survived when Matt Murdock ends up finding the Braille necklace that they had kind of discussed earlier in the film, that she left behind for him as kind of like a way for him to know that she's still alive. He looks off into the sunset even though he's blind, with a smile, kind of knowing she's out there somewhere. And yeah, it always kind of left me excited to see where they would go with it. Now, when this movie first came out when I was a kid, I was really into it. And I think it was just because I was in this certain era of my life where any time that a character was brought to the big screen that was coming from the pages or from the cartoons that I watched that were all of these comic book characters, I was just excited. So this movie does have its positives and its things that I do enjoy about it. But for the most part, I think the worst thing that this movie is forgettable, bland, and kind of boring. I think the worst thing a film can be, in my opinion, is boring. I think even the worst films that have terrible acting and terrible performances and even a weak story can still be redeemed by at least having some sort of elements about it that make it entertaining. Whether it's a cheesy quality or something about it that kind of makes it a guilty pleasure. And I think the worst thing about Elektra is that it is indeed boring and it's quite forgettable. When you look back at just the lineup of early comic book adaptations, this one is just one that I feel like I never think about. And it's not because I haven't seen the movie, because I have seen it quite a few times, but it's just a movie that just is bland, and every time I rewatch it, I feel like I almost forget it not too long after. So let's get into my thoughts on Elektra. This movie does one of my least favorite things that sequels or follow-ups or spin-offs do, which is, play into the next movie without really playing off of the events of that last film all that much. Like I mentioned, she is killed, but they kind of play off the fact that she survived in some way. And at the beginning of this film, we're introduced to the fact that she was indeed killed, but she was resurrected. But beyond that, there is absolutely no tie to Matt Murdock, Daredevil, or any of the events of that last film. The relationship that they had been building up completely is negated, and it has nothing to do with this film. And it's just kind of one of the weakest parts of this movie for me. It's a follow-up sequel that plays off of the fact that she died and she was resurrected, but in no way, shape, or form does she ever mention Matt Murdock, the relationship that they had built, and in no way, shape, or form does it feel like a follow-up or a sequel that really honors that first film in any way, shape, or form. Which is a huge bummer for me again, because I think that though that first film is flawed, I think it did set up for what could have been a really cool sequel with Daredevil and Elektra, and I really enjoyed the relationship that they were building up near the end of the film that is just kind of thrown to the wind when it comes to this movie. Now, I do think that Jennifer Garner looks great as Elektra Nacho. She really is, easy on the eye. She's a beautiful actress, and I like the way that she plays the character. She's stoic, very serious, and I do enjoy her in this film on that level. I think the biggest issue that this film has is a very weak and all over the place script with very bland characters and a very generic movie overall. There isn't really much to this movie that is overly positive for me, because when you look back at the genre or just watch this film in and of itself compared to other action films of the time, it just is forgettable. Now, like I just mentioned, Jennifer Garner I think is good in the film. I do like her as the character, and she looks great as the character. She is really cool when she's going around with those classic Elektra weapons and just in the classic outfit, or at least, you know, this movie's version of it with the red outfit. I do enjoy her in this film in a lot of ways, but the story itself and the characters that are involved in the story are incredibly annoying at times. The basic premise of this film is that she is an assassin for hire, which we've seen Elektra be in various iterations of her character. And yeah, she's been tasked with killing these two people, and when she sees who they are, it's a father and his young teenage daughter who are on the run because the daughter has some sort of abilities that she herself doesn't really know about just yet, and the father is trying to protect her from this. Over the course of the film, she starts to discover her powers as she kind of creates a relationship with Elektra, and Elektra decides she no longer wants to take on this job. She does not want to kill the dad and the teenage daughter, and instead chooses to help them. And she's a little resistant to the idea of helping them at first. You know, she's kind of just being an a-hole, and you know that she wants to kill them or that she's going to kill them, but instead she chooses not to, because in most cases Elektra has been a hero, even though she has been kind of an anti-hero and villain in other parts of the story, or her story overall, different iterations. And yeah, you know, overall I enjoy Jennifer Garner as this character, but the people that she has to protect in this film are so annoying. The dad not so much, but the teenage girl is just oh my god. The lines of dialogue, her performance, and just her overall character is just so bland and boring and just obnoxious. One of those young teenage girls that while I'm watching the movie, I'm thinking, just give her up to the villains, because who cares? Once Elektra decides she no longer wants to take these people out, the corporation that wanted them dead is now sending out this group of different superpowered beings to come out and take this family out, as well as Elektra. And there's some cool people in there. You know, you got the strong man, you got this lady that can, you know, poison people, and probably my favorite of the group is this guy named Tattoo, who literally has various tattoos with different creatures like an eagle or something like that on him, and he's able to literally summon the tattoos to come out of his body, and he can kind of sit there like in a, you know, meditation like stance, or seated in a meditation kind of pose, and the different creatures will come out of him and he can control them, and then they come back and they become a tattoo again. Super cool concept, really enjoy it visually. Most of the CGI in this film is a little bit dated, but I enjoy the visuals overall. There is some cool and fun action in this film that definitely leads into some of that early comic book cheese, but overall this film is just bland, forgettable, and just has annoying characters, and by the end of it you really just don't care about anything that's happening. Now, before I continue my thoughts on this, let's go ahead and hear what the Z Review had to say about this.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another edition, and thanks to the main man Anthony A. Perez for having me back on another collab, which I'm really excited to talk about, but not for a good reason, let me put it that way. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the 2005 movie Elektra, directed by Rob Bowman. Now, I'm sure Perez has probably shared a bit of thoughts about this, but yeah, now before I go to absolute town on this film, because I promised him a rant, I'm going to give you guys a rant as well. I will just get out the way very quickly the positives of this movie. So firstly, I didn't think Jennifer Garner was too bad as Elektra. I thought that her performance in the Daredevil movie was better, because obviously that was a better structured movie than this one, which we'll shortly get to. Yes, I didn't think she was too bad. And the best scene of this movie that I really liked was when she was against the Kurigai, I'm not sure if I pronounced that right. And the scene when they're in kind of like this building and she's trying to face them one-on-one. Their purpose is whoever wins kind of gets the prodigy child as their own for their own benefit. And the fact that there was like a lot of curtains and sheets going around, which was fine, which was a cool effect, by the way. The fact that it kind of gave you a feeling of claustrophobia and an actual sense of a bit of vulnerability towards the Elektra character, because she couldn't see her enemy at this point, and she's trying to get closer and closer, and these sheets were wrapping themselves around her at the same time. So imagine kind of like battling out of a hole that's been dug down deep in the ground. You're trying to get yourself way to the top and get out. A little bit like Batman The Dark Knight Rises, where Christian Bale is recovering and he's trying to get out of that tomb. Obviously it's not the same, but I felt kind of that sense of vulnerability and that sense of, you know, you don't know what to expect, or what you do expect, you having a tough time facing off against it. So those are kind of the main two bits that I liked of this movie. So yeah, I'm about to go to town on this movie, so if you really liked it, I'm sorry, but yeah, this film for me, guys, I was bored. I was absolutely depressed by the end of this movie, and it's just such a shame because this film, the pacing is all over the place. It doesn't know if it wants to be a drama, a chilled out mellow movie, a feel good movie about her trying to overcome the troubles that she's having. The fact that this isn't structured anywhere near as good as the Daredevil movie that was 2 years prior to this, so they should have had more experience, especially with the fact that Daredevil itself was better received as well. Danny Bowman, who directed this, only did a movie 2 years earlier, Reign of Fire, which was a box office disappointment. So going into that, surely they should have thought, well, this guy isn't the right one to be directed. Jennifer Garner herself didn't want to do this movie. She signed the contract on doing Daredevil, but even she went on record saying that she didn't like the movie. She didn't want to do it. So that alone, firstly, begins and kind of foreshadows this movie. As you know, it's going to suck, and it does. But my one biggest gripe of this film as well, besides what I've already mentioned, firstly, the soundtrack didn't work for me. Again, the pacing, sometimes I felt like I was watching like a mellowed, chill out, drama, feel good movie. Then all of a sudden there was an action scene. I was like, oh wow, so I'm supposed to kind of care now? I didn't. But yeah, the one biggest gripe I've got is the girl who plays Abby Miller. Her dad, Mark, he's a boring character. I wasn't really kind of relating to him. I just felt like he's a waste of space on the screen. But his daughter just came across as really annoying. I didn't like her. I felt like her presence on the screen, it didn't make me believe in her at all. I didn't care that she was a prodigy. I didn't care that she was a treasure child. I thought, oh great, something else to throw into this to make it all annoying. And don't get me wrong, I think, you know, Jennifer Garner as Elektra herself, she was pretty cool. I actually didn't mind her as such. But it's the fact that this side protagonist character, who's meant to be like the main treasure of this, she was annoying. Every scene that she got on this film, I was annoyed. I was like, oh God, not again. And by this point, I was falling asleep. Or I was trying to find some food in the fridge or a drink in the fridge to kind of pass the time over, or check my phone every now and then. I was just trying to find a distraction because I was just bored by this film. And I really don't know why it went south very quickly. It could also be to do with the production time of 60 days or so, which really Marvel should have gave it more if they really cared about the film, but I personally think they didn't. And I think this kind of saw like the downfall or demise of the MCU before we actually got Iron Man, I believe in 2008 or 2009. But yeah, I just felt like this was a huge disappointment, and I wondered why I'd only watched this film once. And now I definitely know why I only watched this film once. I don't think I really even liked it that much back in the day, but especially now, it kind of solidified it even more. But I will say this, I want to thank Perez for having me on the Daredevil review, because I'd only seen that movie once, but I actually quite enjoyed that, rewatching it, and I would actually rewatch that again. But with this, the soundtrack sucked, the script sucked, the directing was appalling, the acting by a lot of them, especially that Abby Miller character, just didn't work for me at all. And Terrence Stamp in this movie was wasted. We got a couple of scenes with him, and that was it. Apart from that, I didn't get a chance to care for his character, although I'm sure if they give him a bit more time, it would have been better. Or if they just did a script where it was Elektra and him, and she was learning like some more techniques or new moves from him, because we learn a little bit about how she survived the incidents of Daredevil, but not enough to warrant that I actually cared about. But I just wish she had more time with Terrence Stamp. And yeah, she was against the kind of hand at the time, or we found out that she was actually the treasurer herself for whatever reason, and Terrence Stamp explained that or give kind of some indication. I thought that would have worked better for this movie. But in general, guys, it sucked. I don't recommend it. Don't waste your time. But yeah, I'm going to give the floor back now to Anthony. But yeah, Perez, thanks for the opportunity. Floor's yours.
A big thanks to Mike from the Z Review for being here in this video. Loved hearing your thoughts, man. You did indeed give me the rant that you promised. And I gotta say, even though I think that you found this film just slightly a little bit more boring than I did, we're pretty much almost on the same page. This is a film that just has some potential, but it really just falls flat in so many areas. There are things that work, and I think Jennifer Garner, I really do enjoy her in the role, but like you said, that young teenage girl in this film is so utterly annoying. I think her name is Abby, and I just really don't enjoy the side characters of this film at all. So the journey and, you know, the quest that these characters are on, you just can't really get behind it because the young girl in the film is so obnoxious throughout the course of the film. And the times that Elektra looks like she wants to beat the shit out of her or slap the shit out of her, you kind of want her to. And that's just kind of my feeling throughout the entirety of this film. You mentioned briefly about Terrence Stamp being in this film, and he plays Master Stick, and he's a really great character from the comic books, and we've seen him done incredibly well in the Daredevil Netflix show, which again, I mentioned it in my review for the Daredevil. It's just crazy to see the Daredevil Netflix show nail Matt Murdock, Daredevil, Master Stick, and Elektra in such a great way that really honors the legacy of the characters from the source material while also doing something new with them. And then you look at these movies, the Daredevil and Elektra films, and you just kind of wonder, like, were you guys even looking at the same source material? I just can't help but feel like the older films just did not give full honor to the legacy of these characters, you know, whereas the Marvel Netflix shows, I think, did a really, really great job. But yeah, you know, not trying to compare, this movie in and of itself, I think for me, is just bland, boring, and there's not much to it. Again, I think Jennifer Garner looks great in the role. There's some cool action from time to time, but it's not a film that I can tell people to go rush out and watch if they've never seen it. But maybe you've seen it, and I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. So comment your thoughts down below. Do you like this movie? Do you not like this movie? Do you enjoy this version of Elektra more than the version from the Daredevil Netflix show? Are you like me, and would you have liked to have seen a proper sequel to Daredevil, even if it was focused on Elektra, but was actually able to kind of incorporate Ben Affleck and be a proper sequel to that film? Or do you feel like the way that they went with making it more Elektra-centric was the better decision? I definitely want to hear what you guys have to say, so definitely leave those comments down below. Hit that like button down below, and also go give some love to the Z Review. His link is down below in the description box. A big thanks to him for being here in this video, and I can't wait to continue putting out great videos this week as I am back to doing YouTube videos. A big thanks to all of you guys who have continually watched and supported, and I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say about this one. So until the next time, bye-bye.